The notification alert on my phone buzzed at 2:17 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. Credit monitoring app. New inquiry on your credit report, First National Bank. Loan application $200,000. I stared at the screen while sitting in my parked car outside the grocery store. I hadn't applied for any loans. I immediately opened my banking app and checked my credit report. There it was, a hard inquiry from First National Bank for a commercial real estate loan. The application had been submitted yesterday, using my social security number, employment information, and what appeared to be my electronic signature. But I knew exactly who had access to my personal information. My sister Rebecca had been living in my guest room for 6 months, supposedly saving money to get back on her feet after her divorce. During that time she'd had plenty of opportunities to photograph my documents, memorize my social security number, and observe my digital signatures on legitimate transactions. I drove home and found Rebecca in my kitchen, making herself lunch with groceries I'd bought. She looked up cheerfully when I entered. "Hey sis. How was your day?" "Interesting," I replied, setting my purse on the counter. "I got a credit alert about a loan application I didn't submit." Rebecca's expression didn't change. "That's weird. Probably identity theft. You should call the bank and report it." "Good idea," I said. "I'll do that right now." I called First National Bank and spoke with a loan officer named Marcus Chen. After verifying my identity, he pulled up the application. "Yes, Ms. Davis, we have your commercial real estate loan application here. You applied for $200,000 to purchase a rental property on Maple Street. The application was submitted electronically yesterday with all required documentation." "I didn't submit that application," I said clearly. "Someone used my personal information without permission." "I see. Well, we'll need to investigate this. Can you come in tomorrow to review the application and provide a statement?" "Absolutely. What time?" "How about 2 p.m.? Bring photo ID and any evidence of fraud you might have." After hanging up, I watched Rebecca finish her sandwich. She was scrolling through real estate listings on her phone, occasionally muttering things like, "perfect investment property," and "this neighborhood is really up and coming." That evening, while Rebecca was out with friends, I went into my home office and began documenting everything. As a software security specialist, I was meticulous about digital evidence preservation. I had backup cameras in my home office, keyloggers on my personal computers, and detailed logs of who accessed my wireless network and when. I pulled up the security footage from my office camera for the past week. There it was, clear video of Rebecca sitting at my desk 2 days ago, using my computer while I was at work. She'd spent over 3 hours accessing my email, photographing documents from my filing cabinet, and practicing forging my signature on scratch paper. The keylogger data showed she'd accessed my password manager, copied my bank account information, and downloaded copies of my tax returns and pay stubs. She'd also Googled how to forge electronic signatures and commercial real estate loans for rental properties. My network logs showed her personal laptop had connected to my home Wi-Fi and uploaded large files to a cloud storage account. She'd been systematically collecting my personal information for days. But the most damning evidence was a recording from my digital assistant. Rebecca had made several phone calls from my kitchen, not realizing that my smart home system logs and stores audio when triggered by certain keywords like loan application and signature. In one recorded conversation with someone named Marcus, Rebecca said, "I need this loan and your credit is better. You'll never find out anyway. I'll just submit the application using your information, get the money, buy the property, and pay you back from the rental income." In another call, she told someone, "My sister is so trusting and disorganized. She never checks her credit reports or bank statements carefully. I can probably get away with this for months before she notices anything." The next day, I arrived at First National Bank with a thick folder of printed evidence. Marcus Chin reviewed the loan application with me, and it was immediately clear that Rebecca had done her homework. She'd used my correct employer information, salary details, and even forged a convincing electronic version of my signature. "This is sophisticated fraud," Marcus said, examining the documents. "Whoever did this had extensive access to your personal information." "I know exactly who did it," I replied. "My sister Rebecca has been living in my house for 6 months. I have video evidence of her accessing my computer and forging my signature." Marcus's eyes widened. "You have video evidence?" I showed him the security camera footage on my phone. The video clearly showed Rebecca sitting at my desk, practicing my signature and accessing my personal files. "We need to involve law enforcement immediately," Marcus said. "This is federal fraud involving a $200,000 loan application. I'm calling the FBI Financial Crimes Division." Within 2 hours, FBI Special Agent Sarah Martinez arrived at the bank. She reviewed my evidence folder with professional interest. "Ms. Davis, this is some of the most comprehensive fraud documentation I've seen. You have video evidence, digital forensics, network logs, and audio recordings. This case is ironclad. My sister doesn't know I keep detailed digital records of everything in my house," I explained. "She assumed I would never find out or wouldn't have proof if I did." Agent Martinez studied the timeline I'd created. "According to your evidence, she's been planning this fraud for over 2 weeks. The premeditation and sophistication suggest this could be charged as a federal felony." "What happens next?" I asked. "We'll execute a search warrant on your sister's possessions and interview her about the fraud. Based on this evidence, I expect we'll file charges for bank fraud, identity theft, and computer crimes. The potential sentence is 5 to 10 years in federal prison." That evening, I went home to find Rebecca excitedly showing me real estate listings on her laptop. "Sarah, look at this property. It's perfect for a rental investment. 3 bedrooms, good neighborhood, priced under market value. I'm thinking about making an offer." "That sounds expensive," I said casually. "How are you planning to finance it?" "Oh, I've got some money saved up," she said vaguely. "Plus, I might be able to get a loan based on my income potential." "Income potential?" "Well, once I get back on my feet financially, my earning capacity should qualify me for pretty much any loan I need." I nodded sympathetically. "That makes sense. Banking relationships are really important." Rebecca beamed with confidence. "Exactly. I've actually already started the process with First National Bank. They're very impressed with my financial profile." The next morning I was at work when my phone rang. It was Rebecca calling from home. "Sarah, there are FBI agents at your house." Her voice was panicked. "They have a search warrant and they're asking about loan applications and bank fraud." "What's going on?" "I have no idea," I said calmly. "You should cooperate with them completely. They're taking my laptop and my phone. They said something about document fraud and identity theft. This is crazy." "Just tell them the truth, Rebecca. If you haven't done anything wrong, you have nothing to worry about." 2 hours later, Agent Martinez called me. "We've arrested your sister on federal charges of bank fraud, identity theft, and computer crimes." She initially denied everything, but when we showed her the video evidence, she admitted to the fraud. "How did she react?" "Shock, then anger. She kept saying it was just a loan and that she planned to pay it back, so it wasn't really theft. She didn't seem to understand that loan fraud is a federal crime regardless of intent to repay." "What happens now?" "She'll be arraigned tomorrow morning. With the evidence you provided, the prosecutor expects to get a conviction. Your sister is looking at significant prison time." That evening, I received dozens of phone calls from family members who'd heard about Rebecca's arrest. The reactions were mixed. My mother called crying, "How could you have your own sister arrested? Family should stick together during difficult times." "Mom, Rebecca committed federal crimes using my identity. She could have destroyed my credit and left me liable for $200,000 in fraudulent debt. But she's going through a divorce. She needed help, not criminal charges." "She needed help, so she decided to commit identity theft? How does that make sense?" My brother Michael had a different perspective. "I can't believe Rebecca was stupid enough to try this with you. Doesn't she know you document everything?" "Apparently not," I said. "She thought I was too trusting and disorganized to catch her." My cousin Lisa was furious with me. "You could have just told Rebecca no if you didn't want to co-sign a loan. There was no reason to destroy her life with criminal charges." "Lisa, I didn't co-sign anything. Rebecca forged my signature and stole my identity to commit bank fraud. This wasn't about me refusing to help her. This was about her committing federal crimes." "You're being dramatic. It's just paperwork. It's $200,000 in fraudulent debt that I would have been legally responsible for. If Rebecca's plan had worked, I could have lost my house, my savings, and my credit rating." The preliminary hearing was held a week later. I testified about the evidence I'd collected and explained how Rebecca had systematically gathered my personal information over several weeks. Rebecca's defense attorney tried to portray the fraud as a misunderstanding between sisters, claiming Rebecca believed she had permission to use my information. But the recorded phone calls where she explicitly stated I would never find out, and that she was taking advantage of my trusting nature undermined that defense completely. The prosecutor played the audio recording where Rebecca said, "My sister is so trusting and disorganized. She never checks her credit reports or bank statements carefully. I can probably get away with this for months before she notices anything." The judge was not sympathetic to Rebecca's situation. "Ms. Davis, regardless of your personal circumstances, loan fraud involving $200,000 is a serious federal crime. The evidence shows clear premeditation and deception." Rebecca was bound over for trial on charges of bank fraud, identity theft, wire fraud, and computer crimes. Bail was set at $75,000, which she couldn't afford. While Rebecca sat in federal detention awaiting trial, I received a visit from her divorce attorney, David Walsh. "Ms. Davis, I represent your sister in her divorce proceedings. I wanted to discuss the impact of these criminal charges on her case." "What kind of impact?" "Well, her ex-husband is now seeking full custody of their children, citing the federal fraud charges as evidence that Rebecca is unfit as a parent. He's also demanding that she be required to undergo psychological evaluation before any custody agreement." "I see. Rebecca asked me to speak with you about possibly dropping the charges. She's willing to plead guilty to lesser charges if you'll ask the prosecutor to reduce the penalties." "Mr. Walsh, these are federal charges. I can't drop them even if I wanted to. The FBI and federal prosecutors are handling this case based on evidence of federal crimes. But you're the victim. Your opinion carries weight with prosecutors. My opinion is that someone who commits premeditated fraud involving $200,000 should face appropriate legal consequences. Rebecca didn't make a mistake. She planned and executed a sophisticated scheme to steal my identity and defraud a bank." David Walsh looked frustrated. "Ms. Davis, your sister is facing 8 to 10 years in federal prison. Her children will grow up without their mother. Is that really what you want?" "What I wanted was for Rebecca to get legitimate help with her financial problems instead of committing federal crimes using my identity. She made her choices." 3 months later, facing overwhelming evidence and the prospect of a lengthy trial, Rebecca accepted a plea bargain. She pled guilty to bank fraud and identity theft in exchange for a reduced sentence of 4 years in federal prison. At the sentencing hearing, Rebecca was allowed to make a statement to the court. "Your Honor, I know what I did was wrong. I was desperate after my divorce and I thought I could handle this situation without anyone getting hurt. I never meant to damage my sister's credit or put her in financial jeopardy." She turned to look at me in the gallery. "Sarah, I'm sorry. I know you trusted me and I betrayed that trust. I thought I could fix everything before you found out, but I realize now how stupid and selfish that was." The judge sentenced Rebecca to 4 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. She was also ordered to pay $25,000 in restitution for the bank's investigation costs and administrative expenses. After the sentencing, I was approached by Agent Martinez in the courthouse hallway. "How do you feel about the outcome?" she asked. "Relieved," I said honestly. Rebecca needed to face consequences for her actions, but I'm glad she accepted responsibility instead of forcing a trial. Your documentation made this case airtight. Without your digital evidence, it would have been much harder to prove premeditation and sophisticated planning. I learned early in my cybersecurity career that digital crimes leave digital evidence. Rebecca assumed I was too trusting or too technologically naive to catch her. 6 months later, I received a letter from Rebecca, written from federal prison. "Dear Sarah, I've had a lot of time to think about what I did and why I did it. I was angry about my divorce, scared about my financial future, and jealous of your stability and success. Instead of asking for help or finding legitimate solutions, I chose to betray your trust and commit crimes. I know now that my actions could have destroyed your financial life. If the bank had approved that loan, you would have been legally responsible for $200,000 in debt you didn't create. I was willing to risk your entire future to solve my temporary problems. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know that I understand now why you had to report me to the FBI. You were protecting yourself from the consequences of my crimes, just like anyone would. The other inmates here think I'm crazy for being mad at my sister instead of being mad at you for snitching. But you didn't snitch, you documented evidence of federal crimes I committed against you. There's a difference. I hope someday we can rebuild our relationship, but I understand if you can't trust me again. I proved that I was willing to destroy your life to fix mine, and that's not something a person gets over easily. Rebecca. I never responded to that letter. Rebecca served 3.5 years of her 4-year sentence and was released on good behavior. She now lives in a different state and has supervised visitation with her children every other weekend. Our mother still believes I should have handled it within the family, instead of involving law enforcement. She thinks Rebecca's punishment was too harsh for what she calls a family misunderstanding. But loan fraud isn't a family misunderstanding. Identity theft isn't a family problem. When someone systematically collects your personal information, forges your signature, and submits fraudulent loan applications using your identity, that's a federal crime, regardless of whether you're related to the perpetrator. Rebecca gambled that family loyalty would protect her from the consequences of her crimes. She assumed I would be too shocked, too embarrassed, or too concerned about family harmony to pursue federal charges. He was wrong. Family relationships don't create immunity from criminal law. Trust, once broken by premeditated fraud, cannot be repaired by simply asking for forgiveness. And someone who is willing to destroy your financial life to solve their own problems has demonstrated that they value their convenience more than your welfare. I kept detailed digital records because cybersecurity is my profession, but also because I learned early that predators of all kinds count on their victims being too trusting, too disorganized, or too conflict-averse to gather evidence and pursue justice. Rebecca spent weeks planning her fraud, confident that I would never discover it or never have enough proof to stop her. The security cameras, network logs, audio recordings, and keystroke data proved her wrong. Sometimes protecting yourself means being willing to prosecute the people who are supposed to love you. Sometimes family loyalty means being loyal to legal boundaries instead of criminal behavior. And sometimes the people who tell you to handle it within the family are the same people who would never risk their own financial security to enable someone else's federal crimes. The sound of Rebecca's office door bursting open that morning wasn't just the sound of justice. It was the sound of consequences catching up with someone who believed family relationships would shield her from federal law. They didn't.